you.
Okay, great. All right. Well, if you were expecting something other than the Macaw Recovery Network, I'm not quite sure how you got here, but there we go. Very quickly, just all of you, I think, are familiar with our work where we're working with the birds directly, trying to understand the wild population, particularly the great green macaw, trying to do captive breeding and reintroduction to boost their numbers. We're also working with the habitat, which is obviously the main focus of today's presentation, but also in addition to working with habitat, working with local communities. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much. We want to get into the exciting news of our habitat work. Why is the habitat work that we're doing important? Well, it's important because the great green macaw, which this isn't, I do know, great green macaws are really a bit picky, and they need good habitat. And I put this slideshow, this picture up so that you can see a beautiful photo from Corey of a scarlet macaw. And you can see the size of their head and their beak. And their beak seems quite massive. This is on a bunch of palm fruit. But actually, compared to great green macaws, the scarlet macaws are puny. And great green macaws have this incredibly massive beak. And it was really brought home to me how big it is when I was handling them, because when you handle a macaw, you make sure you've got hold of its head, because that's the dangerous bit. And the size of the great green macaw's sort of jaw structure is just phenomenal. And that's because they eat these mountain almond nuts, which are incredibly tough nuts. And so they need this strong beak to open those. Even this photo doesn't really show it. And I think this one actually shows it pretty well, even though it's a chick. You get to see how huge that lower mandible is. It's a really big beak. And this is just part of the evolution that the great green macaw and the mountain almond have had together, where the great green macaw feeds on these mountain almond nuts, and the tree that produces the hardest nuts makes more of them unavailable to macaws, and then they can germinate. But the macaw with the biggest, strongest beak is the one that can open the most nuts. So there's been this ecological or evolutionary arms race for ever harder nuts and ever bigger, stronger beaks. This is a mountain almond tree. This is on the reserve. This is actually a nest tree as well. They are an incredible tree. The entire crown goes purple when they bloom, and they're just magnificent trees. I've not found a photograph of this tree that shows it well, but they're an emergent tree that stands way over the canopy. There is another large tree next to this one, but the canopy is down here, and then the upper half of this tree is still above the canopy. They're really amazing trees. We've lost these trees and many other trees that are important to the great green macaws, because historically there was clearing for cattle pasture, particularly since the 1950s, to supply the booming fast food industry of the United States and North America, I should say. That's ongoing. We still have that problem. It's not nearly as dramatic as it was back then. I think at some point the amount of forest got down to sort of 25% or 20% of what it once was. So we've lost a lot of forest. And when you cut down forest and you make pasture, you can just see here how on the left there's intact forest, but on most of the photo here you've got this pasture, and it just can't contain the wildlife that an intact forest contains. More recently, there's been a rapid expansion of pineapple, and that is really even worse than pasture, because it's really a monoculture desert with a lot of pollution as well. There's really no cohabitation with other wildlife. And this is actually on the way to the reserve. The hills in the back here, on the right hand side, those hills are forested and part of the reserve, or hopefully will be part of the reserve. And this pineapple has expanded all the way up this area here during the time that we've been involved, and we've been going onto the forest and working in this area. When we first went, this road was a dirt road, and now it's asphalt, and the pineapple wasn't nearly as extensive as this. as this, and now it's right up to the border of the property. So we're seeing some dramatic expansion, and across the north of Costa Rica, the Great Green Macaws range, we've seen this same issue. People say, well, how about engaging with the pineapple producers? And we are actually looking at whether we can do that. A group of organic pineapple producers have reached out to us and are asking if there's a way we can collaborate. We've had one of our board is at the Conservation Law Center, and he's had students looking into it. We're very, very cautious to avoid a situation when we're just helping somebody greenwash. But it would be nice if we can find a way where there is alignment and we can engage with pineapple producers. We'll have to see on that one. So this is the reserve now on the left, and the expanding pineapple on the right here, and it's right up against the border, and it's that classic image that you see where there's habitat for wildlife and then really not a lot. What's interesting here is in the background here, you can see there's this single tree that's left standing. That's a mountain almond tree. They are legally protected, and you're not allowed to cut them down. I'm sure some of them still get cut down, but this one is standing alone, and that is. We see this often where there's clearing, but mountain almonds are left. And this is that photo I showed earlier. My Land Rover makes a cameo to give you a sense of scale. You might not have noticed there's a climber in the tree checking one of the 3 great green macaw nests in this single tree. So this tree is incredibly important, but it's basically living dead. When the forest around it is cleared like this, the microclimate is just not suitable. Probably with cattle around there, there'll be way too many nitrates for the tree, and we see these trees fall into ill health, and actually we see them fall down, die young, essentially. So this is really a problem, something that we're sort of trying to see if there's ways we can even protect these individual trees and sort of create buffer zones around them. These are ancient trees. The mountain almond is believed to I think they've counted the rings on 3 of them. There was a study, and they can live to about 650 years. This is an example of one of those trees. Macaws are big birds, and there's one in this huge entrance of this ancient tree. When these trees die young, even if that's at 200 years of age, it's still a tragic loss for the function of the ecosystem which the great green macaw depends on. And it's not, I'm not making this up, it does happen. We got a call just last breeding season where a nest tree fell over, and there was Mario rescued a chick, and we fostered it into another nest. So it does happen. Another threat is illegal logging. I was my dad visited, and I took him on an adventure into the sort of wild west of the north of Costa Rica, and sure enough, we came head on with a bunch of logging activity. And I don't have definitive proof, but the way they were acting and the behavior and the way that I was able to interact with them, everything screamed illegal logging to me. And we've experienced this before. We've had encounters that have been verified as illegal logging. So it is ongoing. We know it happens. We've heard stories about it. So that just means it's just another reason why we need to protect this forest, find ways to protect it. And that importance can't be overstated, really, that the UN recognizes forests as a key part of the climate crisis mitigation, the nature-based solutions. The forest is home to a wealth of biodiversity, and it's just super, super important. So it's with great pride that I can say that the Macaw Recovery Network has secured its first parcel of land, and that's thanks to the major support from the American Bird Conservancy, March Conservation Fund, and several key donors who've made it possible. And what we're looking at here, up to the foot of that hill in the background there, which is what I showed you from the pineapple fields, this large area of connected forest here is the start of the Sarapiquí Rainforest Reserve. And it's very, very exciting to be part of this private reserve. It's really awesome. Why is this particular patch of forest important? Well, the pins that we're seeing here in the light blue are macaw nests, and the red line, which we're going to see more of this later on, is the area of land that we've just secured. So it's, although from a human perspective, when you go and visit, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's actually macaw central. There's a whole bunch of macaw nests all around this area, and there are great green macaws in this area year round, although the number of birds increases during the breeding season. And this is the dark areas here are forested areas, and you can see that there's lighter areas here throughout, which are just nibbling away at the forest. So it's really a key part of the breeding range. And this is that same tree that we saw in the drone photograph. This is the great green macaw nest, right in the front garden of the house on the reserve. There's all sorts of other biodiversity there as well. This is a harlequin toad, which is critically endangered. I can't say that we've seen this on the reserve, but the reserve is within the range of this species. We've seen tapir on the reserve, incredible mammals. And then this incredible bird, the bare-necked umbrella bird, is found in this area as well. These are all endangered species, as is the Jeffrey's spider monkey. So there's, this is just an example. These are just examples. And 10 miles from our reserve is La Selva, which is possibly one of the best studied tropical forests. And there they've counted over 530 species of birds. So we have to assume that many of those birds are found in the forest on our reserve as well. And that includes birds that you'll be familiar with if you're in North America that migrate here in the wintertime. All of these stats and things don't tell you what it feels like to be on the reserve. And it is just amazing. I love going up there and staying there, and then you wake up in the morning and this place is just dripping in wildlife and biodiversity. And you're just, every time I go, I see species I've never seen before. And it's fantastic. I really, really love it. And like I said, macaws are there year round. Seasonally, there's a roost of up to 30 birds. We've got the nest on the site. The birds after the breeding season do disperse, but there's always some birds around that area. And it's just a really nice, for me, it's just really great for MRN to be making that step, because when we've done conservation planning and looking at what we need to do to protect the macaw, protecting habitat is a key piece of that. Over to Pamela for a moment.
Yeah, hello. I have to say hello because I have seen many familiar faces, and it's great to see you guys. So hi. Well, I have to admit that the day before that we purchased the reserve, I couldn't sleep because for us, that was achieving a big goal that we had, but also it was the first step of the biggest goal, which is protecting the land. And there have been many projects that are using a fortress model for protecting land, and we have learned that kind of model give poor results. So during that night, I was thinking, how can we make this work? And definitely the answer is working with the community and be open to the local community for managing the reserve. Luckily, we have some experience doing this and working with communities. And today I'm going to just show you a couple of projects that we want to expand next year around the reserve. So if you are a real MRN fan, you have heard probably about the Ambassador Project. This project, we work with local landowners and farmers, for creating a bond with the organization, but also with the species, with the great green macaw. We really want them to, or we really want to create a network of people that are aware of the conservation of the great green macaw. And it's easy. MRN cannot buy the entire habitat of the great green macaw, but we can be the friend that help this group of people on protecting their lands and having better practices on their land. So for example, here in this picture, you can see a group of landowners. This is an event that we held once a year. Actually, the one from this year will be next Friday, so I will tell you more details about it. And we spend an entire morning with them. It's an educational event and also a way to create this bond with the landowners. Next. So, and yes, the idea is to expand this ambassador project all around the reserve. The second project that you may have heard about and we want to expand is the Women Ranger project. This project started in 2021, and before the project, the Rangers had low knowledge about the great green macaw, but also they admit that they barely noticed the great green macaws in their community. So now, and after 3 months of monitoring the nest, they changed their behavior and start noticing the great green macaw, and also wanted to make an impact on the great green macaw habitat. So they decided to start growing trees for the great green macaw. And here you can see Elvida looking so proud at her tree, her guayaba tree. Next. So as you may know, also we started with this nursery. Some of you have been there actually with the Rangers, and the Rangers have started with this project by themselves. I have to say that the key for this project, as a successful project, is that the women Rangers were aware of the great green macaw situation, and also they were excited about the project. So that, for me, that was the first key. And second, the opportunity that we have as MRN to support them with technical support, but also with financial support. And also this is thanks to all the donors that believe in MRN's work. And I'm saying that we give economical support because they have a scholarship for being in the nursery and investing time in the nursery. These have allowed them to invest 3 days per week at the nursery. So if we cannot help them with some, let's say, money, they cannot invest the same quality and same amount of time working in the nursery. And of course, with MRN there, this looks easy in a way, because we can give this economic support, but the reality is that we hope we can have a self-sustainable nursery in the future. Actually, I think that we are walking towards have a self-sustainable nursery. And this year, if you want some, you can next, thank you. So this year, we were able to sell, the Rangers were able to sell 2,500 trees. And we can see there is a market in Costa Rica for selling these trees that the Rangers are growing. Also, the Rangers have been exploring the opportunity of have tourism at the nursery, and we already host some groups of tourists at the nursery, and these people are very excited and interested in understand how the nursery works. So we can see the nursery becoming a micro business for the Rangers, and let them lead the great green macaw conservation in the community. Part of this leadership is also to educate kids. So in the last slide, you can see Su Yang with a kid from the community. We developed some reforestation events. Sam, no, go back.
Sorry,
Thank
I'll try to go back.
So here, there is Sudan. So Sudan in a reforestation event that we organized with the local school. We believe that next time that educating kids, we can we can make together with the rangers, leading by the rangers, a community friendly, a Great Green Macau community friendly. Sorry, a Great Green Macau friendly community. Next. So at the moment we have 6 rangers at the nursery, but as have been mentioned, we want to expand the project and we want to create a second group of rangers for next year. All the trees that these rangers are growing will be planted at their reserve. So it means that all the pastures that the rainforest reserve has will be forest again, thanks to the rangers. We think again that the rangers are the ones that have to lead the process and lead the conservation of the Great Green Macau. And also I can picture their reserve have a community asset that will allow these people to improve their livelihood.
Thank you, Pam. That's great. Yeah. So, so how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And where is this going? And so that's where I'm going to zoom out and go to the big picture. And let's just now talk about how we want to grow the reserve and make this community asset, make something that's a big thing, that then it benefits the communities that we depend on for protecting biodiversity, macaws, and all the rest of it. So here we're looking at the Central America, the bottom end of the States and Mexico, and into South America here. And just to orientate everyone, and this is Costa Rica is here. When I talk about the big picture vision of what we're going to do, I mean, I have one board member on the call, so I have to be careful. But I would love to see connected forests going from Costa Rica down into Colombia, and I think that from the north of Costa Rica into Colombia would be phenomenal. But that's maybe a bit big for the moment. Let's start with something a little bit more manageable. This is the north of Costa Rica and the southern end of Nicaragua. This is the Indo-Maize. I have scarlet macaws flying over. Sorry to be interrupted, but I think it's a pretty good one. So I've got the Indo-Maize Reserve. It is a large protected area in the southern end of Nicaragua, but it's getting encroached. It's really an unfortunate situation, and that makes our work in Costa Rica even more important. The macaw breeding area is in the north here, and I'll zoom in on that area in a minute. But what's interesting is we still don't fully understand exactly where the birds are going, and we're trying to improve our understanding of their distribution over space, where they're going, and over time, when they're going there. So we've set up a grid of passive audio recorders. If you think of elephants, you use trail cameras to record photos of them. Well, that doesn't really work with macaws, but sound does work very well. So we have this grid of sound recorders. It now covers over 10,000 square kilometers, and that is really going to help us to look at this distribution of the macaws, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with protecting nesting areas, but we may find that it's actually the non-breeding season areas that they use that are also very important. Just as with migrants from North America, often actually the most important thing is to protect their overwintering habitat. We know in September, October, they're in these foothills here, and then they're back in the breeding area from December to April. And so, but there are still some gaps in our knowledge, but it's this area that is really important for us. And then zooming in a little bit more, this is the main breeding area here. The white lines are national parks. This is a national mixed use area, the gray line. The orange lines are some of the private protected areas from our partners, and it's not a complete a complete record of all of them. The nice thing about Costa Rica is it does attract attention from organizations who want to create private reserves and so on, or even individuals. And that is something that I think is a tremendous opportunity, because there isn't a lot of coordination within those. And I think that's a role that MRN can play, where when we talk about what's our vision in Costa Rica, it's, well, can we create something, a national park size protected area that benefits great green macaws? I'm not saying we need to buy all of that land, but let's find ways to collaborate with the organizations that have private protected areas, like these ones that are shown here in orange, but also those individuals that Pamela was mentioning, the landowners. If we can collectively get behind a cause for the macaws, and then create something of a national park sized area, I think that would be phenomenal. I don't think it has to be a continuous patch of forest, but a significant amount of this remaining forest being protected would be really exciting. When we zoom in a little bit more, we start to see the reserve, which is in red here. This is land owned by Ecovita, an organization we partnered with just recently on the Great Green Macaw Census. This is land from an organization, a business called Rainforest Water. They make aluminium water bottles, and they're about to launch a new bottle with a Great Green Macaw on it, with our logo on the back and everything like that. So that they're a partner. This is another tropical science center. So these are institutional partners. These colored areas are areas that we've identified in our vision of immediate opportunities. And I've already been talking with a company that's a broker for carbon credits. Although it's not perfect, I think it's actually it has potential as a mechanism for bringing resources, money to local conservation organizations and local communities. So that would be in a slightly longer term vision, it'd be to try and secure these areas. This green one, you'll notice, does ignore the two lines in the middle. It's one large area. Has a lot of pasture. That is just an opportunity for reforestation, and that is something that we need to build capacity for with the women rangers, where we're then putting forest back. And that is actually very attractive for carbon funding, because then by building a forest, you're pulling in carbon. When we get even more zoomed in, we see the reserve. Now, this was known as La Peninsula because there's a river to the north and a river that runs through the middle here that meet at the top of the property. 80% of the property is forested with, it's about 512 acres, and 100 acres is pasture. So we're going to be working on the reforestation of that. But next in our sites, and another important area to protect, is this property to the south, which is called Returno. There's 2 great green macaw nests on here, and it is owned by the same owner. And we, in the purchase of La Peninsula, we secured an option or a right of first refusal on this property, and we have 12 months from August. So we have until August 2024 to make an agreement to purchase the land. We don't actually have to have all the money and buy it outright, although that would be nice. But he's in the past offered us 0% financing, and that there are potentially ways that we can, if we don't have all the funds, that we'll be able to secure that forest. The neighbor, Marvin, bought some of this stretch of yellow. The lines are imperfect. That's my Google Maps stuff. Well, actually in Costa Rica, the lines on the ground are also a little bit imperfect. It's always an interesting process. Some of this was part of the La Peninsula property in the past. Marvin bought it from the owner, but he recognizes if we reforest these 2 pastures where he grazes his cows, his farm is no longer viable, and so he's already offered to sell his farm to us. So what does that look like? Here's a bit more info. So Returno, I don't know if people work mostly in acres or in hectares. I've also put in I put these lines here. So the red one is a kilometer, which is 1,000 meters and is logical. The white one is a mile, which is 5,280 feet, which is just, I think that's hilarious, even though Brits had miles as well. But just to give you a sense of scale here, that's the kind of area we're talking about. So Returno is 551 acres. The cost of that project, which is the land purchase and funds for ongoing management and that ongoing outreach, which Pamela talked about, which is a critical piece of protecting the forest, not just through a fortress model, but engaging the community. We've estimated that project cost at $750,000. We've secured some of that funding, and we have pledges and some indications of support for that funding. So I'd say we're certainly a few $100,000 into that. I can't say exactly, and we'll have to see how donations come in. So the Returno property is the next one. Now, obviously, there's a lot of strategic value to securing Marvin's property as well. That's a smaller property, and that would be $250,000. There's a zero missing there. These are. I like maps, and I love the satellite imagery and everything, but it doesn't really show you what it is. And there we go. Here we go. This is the Returno property. Looking at those hills front with the drone being over the red over the La Peninsula property, and this is what we're trying to protect next. And like I mentioned, it's got 2 great green macaw nests on it that we know of, and potentially more. And I think there's definitely potential to experiment with increasing the density of macaws and the importance. There's also a little bit over 100 acres of pasture to reforest as well. It's incredibly exciting, and we'd love to get you involved with that in whatever way that might be. And I'm very interested to hear your thoughts and get questions on this, whether those are from me or from Pamela and our expanding outreach work. Thanks for your attention today.
Great. Great. Well, I think it's good to wrap things up and not leave you all past the hour. Well, wrap up before the hour. I think we just want to wrap up with one more question for both Sam and Pam. I think to share. I mean, we have a big project going on right now, and an extremely urgent and sizable problem. That is also a long-term thing that we're investing in. And with that in mind, will people here today, what is the biggest, the possible thing that they could do today?
Well, I'll jump in and say, of course, that we've got a big target of $750,000. If anybody wants to talk to me about making a contribution towards that, we are some way into that number. I think by the end of the year, we'll have a much better idea of exactly how much we've left to raise. But if somebody wants to be involved in that, then please do get in touch with me directly. I'm happy to have a call to talk about big donations anytime. So yeah, let me know. On a smaller scale, it's $1,200 to buy an acre. So if that's more at the level you want to contribute, then we'll welcome any donation. So that's for the land purchase. That would be my take home.
And for restore that pastures that we have in the reserve, I can say that with $2,000 you can support 6 rangers for a month.
Great. Thank you, Pam and Sam. And closing off with that, you can everybody here can think about leaving a 5% in their legacy to the macaws as well, and think about long-term making a difference for the parrots. So I think we're going to wrap it up with this, and I'd like to thank everybody here so much for joining, for all your great questions. Sam and Pamela, for your time, great presentation. Hope everybody had an interesting evening or afternoon or morning. Yeah, please do reach out to us if you'd like to connect personally. We can jump on a call and or you can come visit. So thanks everybody, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.